Mealy.
Mealy. Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Welcome back, folks. Thanks again for another tuning in to another episode of our podcast here. This guest, for all of our safety professionals out there, you're going to be extremely overwhelmed when you hear what this gentleman has accomplished. Roy Mealy. He's an ASP, CHST, dedicated safety professional with over 15 years of industrial experience, having 8 of those being in the safety field. Not only does he currently serves as director of EH&S at BHI, but also public affairs officer for the Army National Guard. Okay, one of the things that he really that stands out to me is he engages or promotes an influence of the workforce to leave each day to be better than what they were and to go home, but also he adds one more bit to that, wants them to arrive the very next day with the enthusiasm and drive to work in a safe and productive manner as well. So he's won the Dotson Award. He's a Master of Science in Safety, Security, Emergency Management, Eastern Kentucky University with a 4.0. So he's definitely smarter than Dave and I. You might get a lot of you're going to get a lot of information out of this one, guys. So, but without further ado, man, like we said, Roy, we could go on with all his accolades. We're just going to go ahead and let you get right to it. Roy, welcome. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you. Want me to start, but maybe with the Dotson Award. I saw the award pop up in my email, and it was a scholarship, and said I was eligible to apply because I was under 40 as a safety professional. They were looking for somebody with a preference would be given to those with a master's degree, and I had just graduated from Eastern Kentucky, and so I decided to apply, and not knowing anything about it, I thought it had been an award that had been going on for a while, and then I was actually we had taken my youngest daughter to the emergency room one morning, and she has complex medical issues and was vomiting, and we were up all night and took her to the ER. And while we were there waiting for the doctors, I received an email that I had earned the scholarship. And so it was just, we're going through this difficult day already. And then, I just got this good news, and email after email after email kept coming from the BCSP Foundation, from different people congratulating me and what it meant, and looking forward to seeing them at that Research and Innovation Summit where they awarded the scholarship. So, um, it was actually the first time they did the award. I was the inaugural recipient of the award,
Oh, okay.
uh, and
Wow.
so I understand they were hoping for at least 25 recipients, but they had way or not recipients, but applicants, and then to find out they had way more than that. So they were excited to go through all the resumes. They had a panel going through it, but the benefactor is Kyle Dotson, and he is an and he had a similar award called the Cousins Award, and he was the ninth recipient of that, and that was and that started shortly. I think it was around the 1970s. Shortly after that, they wanted to help industrial hygienists get ahead in the world and create opportunity for professionals. And when he got to a point in his career, he's like, I want to do the same thing, but on the safety side.
Mm.
And that's where they got started with it. And he's helped other industrial hygienists start out. And in the safety profession, with any career, sometimes it's hard to get your foot in the door with different things without a little bit of cash in your pocket. And that was his intent. He wants to help emerging professionals succeed. And so that scholarship is meant to help those move forward and get the credentials they need and get the education they need, and whatever else can help them professionally. And that's what I'm using it for, to get a couple other credentials and another education to further kind of my agenda in the safety field.
That's all.
Oh,
That's a um, it's pretty unique award in what it offers and for our sake, because for those of us getting into the safety professional world, they'll eventually understand that this is extremely beneficial to them if they want to progress their career. But you said one thing, it's only for 40 years or younger.
Yeah, so it's emerging professionals, and so they're trying to hit the demographic that is jumping into the safety career, whether they've had
Gotcha.
years of experience, but and I don't know why they chose 40, but that's their frame for it. And 38, I was like, okay, I'm gonna apply, see where it goes.
Now, what kind of
Uh,
opportunities does the scholarship offer you? Like, what can you use the scholarship for?
There's no there was no limit to it. They didn't say you have to use it for this or this or this. In fact, they just asked me what do you plan on using it for? So they're not dictating what that sum will be used for. They just trust that they'll use it for an education, to further their career.
Have you got any ideas of what you want to use it
Yeah.
for?
So I applied for and took the CSP exam, and I failed it by 8 percentage points. And devastated for a little bit, but I'm not the kind to run away from failures. So um, I recently received the benefit, and actually as soon as I got it, the day I got it, I applied to sit for the exam again. And so right now I'm studying for that, and see if I can obtain my CSP. And then the next one I'm going to go for is the CWP, which is the Certified Wellness Practitioner through the National Wellness Institute.
wow.
And so I'm going to take some courses to prepare me to sit for that exam, and hopefully receive that designation.
Go into a little more detail about the CWP. What is that? Like, what kind of platform does that put you on?
So there is obviously some eligibility standards, right? Do you work in wellness, healthcare, working with whatever or whoever that in a wellness state, right? Promoting wellness in the workplace and in the environment. And I meet the eligibility requirements. I worked as a line staff through college at a group home for juvenile sex offenders, and I did that for the majority of my time in college, and learned a lot about working with youth. But in working in the construction industry, we have the second highest rate of suicide in
Hmm.
any industry, next to mining and oil and gas extraction. In 2020, we lost 1,008 people to workplace accidents. We lost 5,432 to suicide, just in
Hmm.
construction. And as somebody that was close to taking my life, back in 2009, I'm dedicated to promoting wellness in the industry and getting it. Maybe we can drive those numbers down. And I'm not going to be focusing on suicide prevention more than I'm going to be focusing on building a resilient workforce. And so bringing the CSP or even my ASP with a CWP, I plan on becoming somebody who is another voice. There's plenty of voices out there that are promoting this. I want to be another voice to see what we can do to build resiliency among our crews.
Wow, I really like that.
Wow.
That's the first time I've heard of a CWP. What are your prerequisites? That'd be something I'd be really interested in. However, like the CSP, I'll never be able to get one. I'm 46, and there's no way I'm going to go to 4 years of college just to get. You know what I mean?
You know what? Yeah,
Mhm.
you should probably look at the SMS though if you haven't gotten that. That's in that strategic category with the CSP. You don't have to have a college degree for it. Your experience goes for that. So
Huh.
definitely dig into the BCSP credentials, and there's a wheel that shows you kind of the benefit of each of those. The CHST and the OHST, they're more managerial and expertise, right? You've got your education one, the G that works, and the ASP. Those help promote for the SMS and the CSP. But the SMS might be one that you should absolutely go for.
Okay. And that kind of holds the same clout as a CSP in a sense.
Yeah, it's in that same demographic of strategic safety leadership, right? And
Ah,
your director, your VP level positions are SMSs or CSPs. And obviously the
interesting.
CSP is what they consider the gold standard of the credentials, but the SMS is right there with it. Like, don't discount your experience in the industry, um, education, and that's interesting topic in the Facebook group that we're
Right.
on and among
Yeah,
professionals. It's all valuable. Whether you started with education, whether you only have experience. Experience is just education, right?
yep.
But you learned it through your time in the field. So that SMS is a valuable designation or certification to get.
I appreciate that info, and I'm definitely going to look into that.
And we've
Now the
had,
CWP. Oh, go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to say, we've had conversations about too, about, the different routes and how safety professionals get to where they're at. Corey and I both have a good friend that went the educational route. Corey comes from his tools,
Mhm.
and then my background is um, emergency medicine. I was a paramedic so and I mean, great discussions, but there are so many routes. I mean, like you said, some people, don't want to go to college, for it. Some people have the experience, and again, think I don't want to go back, to school, or I don't want to go to school. But that's the great thing about safety is that there are so many different routes to get to where you want to get to.
Well, industry is so diverse, right? I don't know why we
Right.
even have the debate of education versus experience. If
Right.
you're of that mindset of continual improvement, you could read
Mm-hmm.
books every day without seeking any certifications, and you're going to be improving yourself and improving others around you. If your intent is to
Right.
improve, you're going to find different ways to do it. Whether you're general industry, construction, maritime, you're in the healthcare industry, safety professionals, I think we hold each other to a high standard based on our biases. You know, that what's best for you in your career and where it's taking you. And some of those, like the credentials, the alphabet soup behind their name.
Yeah.
Some are the college. I'm going to go get a PhD, and some are I'm going to rely on my experience. And each of those are valuable for
Right.
you just got to get put into it. What's going to help me out and help others along the
Mm-hmm.
way.
Yeah.
Corey, to answer
So
your question
going.
on prerequisites for the CWP, um, there there's an eligibility criteria. You have to have so many years doing wellness or an education in wellness. If you don't have an education in wellness, obviously your years in wellness will count towards it. So I encourage you to go look at those, and I can send you some links afterward. But I believe it would be a valuable thing to look into for sure.
Yeah, because just like on your introduction, something that Dave and I have spoke about a lot was you hear this whole though we want you to lead the same way you came in. Well, Dave and I put a little twist on it when him and I were working together. We don't only want you to leave the same way you came in, we want you to leave better. Did you learn something today? And can you bring it in tomorrow? So when I saw that you had said basically the same thing, you want them to come back to work the next day with the enthusiasm and drive to not only be productive but work safe as well. And something I think Dave and I coined when we were working together is, as a safety professional, our job is to find a way to stabilize production, right? Find a cost effective way to stabilize production. We're not out there to stop you. We're not out there to be a cop and shut the job down and have the general managers and the superintendents, project managers all figure it out on their own. We're there for resource and support. So to hear you say that, it really hit me. Like that's my path in it, is to do that. It's to not only build a culture but to sustain it. And having that CWP, I think, would help me along the way figure out different ways to do that.
And I think the key to that is we want you to come back, right? Because so many people go
Right.
home and have the risk of, the mental health risks and other risks. We don't want you to take your life. We don't want you to choose those routes. We want you to come back and happy and healthy. And I think that's the focus. And then I think you're speaking to HOP, right? Human performance, psychological safety. We want to promote healthy relationships on the job site,
Yep.
between safety and operations. I had an experience at basic training where we had the a commander come in with a sergeant major, and he kicked out all the drill sergeants and was having a sensing session experience. And he all of us, my job today is to change 50 years of bad tradition. And of course, he was talking about how the drill sergeants work with the privates, and it can be a pretty hostile environment. And they didn't want to soften the experience, but they wanted to change it so it was a more respectful environment. At least that's how they put it to us. And I am kind of on the same uh, agenda for safety. I want to change 50 years of bad tradition of a safety
Right.
person being perceived as a cop, being
Yeah.
perceived as not a member of the team,
Mm-hmm.
being perceived to throw around their weight and then leave.
Yeah.
We want to be there to support their operation because it doesn't benefit us to stop their operation,
Nope.
but it doesn't benefit them to unsafely. They've got to be able to provide for the safe measures of their employees. They need coached on how to do that.
Yeah, I agree
Right.
100%.
Oh yeah. Well,
So,
have that. The safety guys come in the old hooty hoo or whatever kind of code that that the people have about, oh, safety guys here, be careful. It should be you're being careful no matter if the safety guy's there or not, and it
Correct.
shouldn't be stop work because I know they're going to find something and I can't, I don't want to get written up. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I was on the pipeline and talking to safety professionals, and they'd say, you'd walk around the site and guys would literally put their tools down because they're like, okay, I'm not going to do anything. I can't get in trouble if I don't
yeah,
do anything. And, and they have that mindset of the safety guy is against them, and that culture, Corey and I have, talked about and worked on changing that culture, about, the safety guy's the jerk. He's the one with the attitude. He's the one that's gonna,
get your
he
money.
wakes up in the morning. Yeah, he wakes up in the morning going, okay, how many guys am I going to write up today? How many guys
Mhm.
am I going to walk off today? And right, and we definitely need to change that culture. We're all working for the same goal, and that is to get the product, out or completed, and everybody go home. And like you said,
Mhm.
everybody wanting to come back. That's a
And
that's a great goal that safety needs to
and you
adopt.
have to recognize who is law enforcement in the safety world. Who is law enforcement? It's OSHA, it's MSHA,
Hmm.
it's the regulatory agencies. We are not law enforcement. We have to
Right.
enforce a standard. One guy in my class, a peer, he said that his company refers to safety as the rumble strip on the side of the highway, right? Law enforcement is up and down that highway. We're driving our vehicle down the road. He goes, safety and those with safety responsibilities, including, have to be the rumble strip, right? Which is a standard. A foot left on the side, but I'm going to chirp at you until you get back in your lane, right? You're crossing the standard.
Yeah,
Going to chirp and chirp and chirp. We've got to be annoying to get them back in the lane so that when we pass law enforcement, we're not going to get cited, right?
Right.
We've got to be that person that opens our mouth, and it's uncomfortable even for safety people. I don't know if safety enjoys just getting people all heated. Actually, I know a few, but that's not our intent. Our intent is just to keep our companies going down the center of that highway and helping them watch for road obstructions and other hazards along the way.
Uh, totally agree, because if you ask anybody, I'd say about 90% of our workforce, what is safety out here to do? More likely, 100% of those 90% of them people will say something like, what, stop us from doing something, stop us from getting hurt. They don't really understand. Uh-oh, can you not hear us? Roy, you there?
I can't, Corey, if you're talking, I can't hear you.
Okay, Dave, see if he can hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Dave.
Okay.
You can't hear me? Can you hear me now?
No, I don't think
No.
you can. I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know what the.
you can go ahead, Dave. I'll try to figure
Yeah.
this out.
And hopefully it that won't be a struggle for the rest, of whatever time we have on this earth. But I know, even from the time that I've been in safety, I mean, and talking to quite a few, GCs and stuff, and they're starting to understand, that, you know, the safety person is not just somebody that you can put on paper that can cut down their insurance. It's, we are all one team. And again, I've to, big GCs, and they're having meetings on this, which is very impressive. Where, because you have to have a buy-in.
Yep.
You can't go out there and, talk to the guys, be with the guys, and then go back and talk to the GC, and the GC was like, you know what,
Hello.
we need, we have deadlines, so, you need to, kind of cut back a little bit and, quit getting on these guys. And it's not that we're, trying to get on these guys. We're like, again, I love what you said about the little rumble strip. Our job is to make sure, to protect the employee, the people that work there, and to help them get their job done. And but no, I I have personally seen a lot of changes in the time that I've been in the safety, and I'm hoping that that continues. But so, with, with since you've been in safety, what kind of changes have you seen, positive or negative? Anything that you went, man, it used to be like this, now it's not. Again, positive or negative.
You know, so I've been in oil and gas and construction off and on since 2006, and that attitude just in my own organizations of, here comes the safety cop, here comes the safety Nazi. I don't hear that as much. We still hear it every now and then. You get somebody
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't understand our culture, but within the organizations I've worked in and currently BHI, we have positive relationships with our team. There's still going to be conflict, normal. Not everybody going to agree on some things. As a safety professional, you absolutely cannot allow people to violate the law. When it comes to
Right,
best
right.
practices, however, you can give your suggestions, but if they don't follow that best practice, and you got to learn. If I can teach safety professionals anything, learn to differentiate between the law and best practices. You have to be that competent leader who can know both of those so that you can coach appropriately, stop the job
Mm-hmm.
appropriately. I've seen that happen. I still bump into safety professionals that are like, hey, you have to slope that at 3 feet because that's what they learned in the company, that was their
Mm-hmm.
policy, but they didn't learn that the law is actually 5 feet or more than 5 feet, right? um, and you have to remind them, hey, that sounds like a best practice, not a
Yeah.
not the law. And understanding that not everybody's a professional either. I I think we throw that term around a lot just because they have an education or a designation or whatever else. We're all practitioners. We are all practicing safety.
Mm-hmm.
Professionals take it a step higher and bring leadership into the safety element, that communication, that trust, that competency, that benevolence, actually caring for the people that we're serving. I'm seeing that come into the safety industry a lot more. We're not talking just about safety in the law, we're talking about safety leadership and how that translates on from, I think you've heard the term work as imagined versus work as performed, and bridging that gap between the two. Work as imagined is those policies, procedures, the company culture. Work as imagined is how that's implemented. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it doesn't translate correctly, but we can
Right.
close those
Right.
gaps as much as possible. And
Yeah.
that's going to be communication with each of the employees and bringing them into the conversation. I tell guys all the time, never put your life on the line for a paycheck, for a company that you may not be working for in a year or two because you found something better. Don't risk your eyes, don't risk your ears,
Mm-hmm.
don't risk your lungs by cutting corners with PPE. It's not worth it.
Right.
You got to protect yourself and hold us accountable. If you think that you don't deserve those, you need to speak up and talk to somebody that's going to listen.
Right.
So I'm seeing a lot more of that. People actually do care about their own personal safety.
That yeah, that stop work authority,
Yep.
that we give employees, you know, if you don't feel comfortable doing it, say something and let's talk it out. Let's look at it. And that's what I always tell, my guys. If you have issues with heights and you're told to, climb this, extension ladder, I want to know about it because
Yep.
I don't want you up there the whole time, in your mind, I'm going to fall, I'm going to fall, I'm going to fall, because you're not going to be able to do your job or the job correctly, and on top of that, with all that fear, you're going to basically talk your body into falling,
Right.
or being in a closed environment. You know, let me know. It we can work around that. It's we're not let you go because you have an internal internal fear of something. Again, I don't want you in a confined space sweating and getting ready to toss your cookies because well I have to do this because I'll get fired. And again, be, I consider part of my job as a safety guy as an intermediate,
Right.
kind of like the mouthpiece as well, for the company and for the employee, back and forth. Um, but yeah, that's been an issue that has come up in my experience, in my uh, time as a safety person, is that you have especially younger guys, that this is probably either the first job or the best paying job, and they're scared to death of losing it.
Right.
So they'll actually consider putting themselves in harm's way because in their mind, if I don't do this, they're going to let me go.
Right. Corey, do we
But you're
have
abs-
you?
Corey, can you hear me? Corey, Corey.
Yeah, totally. Cut out.
Hmm.
Yeah, he's still having some issues. But one question I'd like to ask, of course, I love to get other people's opinion on everything.
Hmm.
But one thing that I like to ask safety professionals, and this kind of goes back a little bit about changing, the culture and how we're perceived. So if you can imagine like a pie graft, and then on that pie graft, you have personal like interaction with employees. How big of a slice, or how important do you think it is to have
Just
that
tapped it.
that relationship with the people, or with the employees that you're working with?
Oh, I'd say 90% of it.
Yeah.
I'd say 90% of it. Clive Lloyd, he wrote a book on next level or next generation safety leadership. Um, and he talks about the trust triangle: integrity, competence, benevolence. All three of those, you take one of those away, and there's going to be no success. Our job in leadership and safety leadership is relationships. If I come out and I'm just that compliance officer, and
Mm-hmm.
I can effectively get people to listen to me and make those changes while I'm there, um, that's all I'm going to get: compliance while I'm there. But
Right.
if I develop a relationship with those guys, and they know me, they know my expectations, I know them, and I know their expectations. Right? It's not one way; it's both ways. You
Mm-hmm.
can be an authoritative figure, or you can be a leader and a part of the team. And so I'd say 90% of it has to be relationships. The rest of it's going to take care of itself. If they know I genuinely care about their safety, they're going to genuinely care about their safety. If they know that I genuinely care about their right to stop the job, they're going to
Mhm.
care about their right to stop the job. And it's not just
Right.
me, it's got to be the buy in from senior leadership, middle management, down to the foreman. If they don't feel that from each one of their leaders, that their relationship is the most important thing, we won't see success in safety. We
Right.
will continue to see shortcuts and willful violations and serious violations.
Right.
Uh, you have to know your people. You have to be able to care for them and communicate with them.
I completely agree, and that's one thing, and you said your people in my background being a paramedic is listening to people. You could put them on a cardiac monitor, and the monitor says, "Hey, they're fine," but they're telling you they're not. You've got to go by what they're telling you, and I've taken that over to safety. You know,
Yep.
where I've witnessed other safety people come out to the field maybe once every 2 days or once a week or just ridiculous amounts of time, and guys are asking me, "Who's that?" And he's the safety guy for this company. I've never seen him before, and I go, "Well, he's been here for like 2 years."
Right.
And it's just one of those things. If they first of all, but if you don't, like you said, show an interest in them. I've I don't know who wants flies, but they say you get more flies with honey. But I've had guys that I've said, hey, don't forget, 3 points of contact, and they've looked at me and like apologized. Oh, Dave, I'm sorry. You know, I knew better. I'm sorry, Dave. Where, if you're not out there and you don't have the relationship with them, then they're like, oh, right, the safety guy is just out here busting chops again. But no, I've I've seen both sides of it, and I'm I'm completely on board with you. It's got
Mm.
90% is for sure. Rules and regulations, but unless you have their trust, it's just all words. So yeah.
Yeah.
Am I good now?
Corey, we got you back.
Hey,
Hey, hey,
man.
buddy, where you been?
I I don't know what happened there, but I'm sure I missed a whole lot of good conversation, and I do apologize. But
I think we recorded it, so you should be able to see it later.
yeah, yeah,
Tune
good
in,
feedback
Corey.
there. Yeah, um, man, I can't even remember the question I was trying to ask when I lost contact with y'all. But I don't know. I don't know. How about we get a little bit more personal details about you, Roy? We got all your professional ideas and the way you execute things, but what got you into this? Are you part of the Army National Guard? Is that who you
I,
served? Okay, so
yep.
where are
So
you from? Where are we getting you from today? Like, where are you hosting yourself at? And tell us a little bit growing up to where you're at now.
Okay, I grew up in Vernal, Utah, and I currently live in Layton, Utah, just north of Salt Lake City. Vernal, Utah is a very small town. About I think it's about 10,000 people. It's an oil field community. It's the biggest town for the basin for the county that we're in.
That's
Um,
just. I'm sorry to interrupt. It just always cracks me up when I hear somebody say 10,000 is a small town. I grew up in Northeast Texas. We came from like 2,500, 3,000
right,
people. Now
right.
that's
And
a small town.
I've come from smaller towns. I used to
Where they
live in
take turns
Lyman.
being mayor. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. One stoplight in the middle, and it's right next to the Easy Mart.
Everybody knows everybody, and everybody knows everybody's business. Yep.
Yep. Yep.
I grew up in Lyman, Wyoming, which is north of Vernal, and it's a actual small town. But coming out to this, the Wasatch Front, which is all city, in Utah, Vernal's a lot smaller than what we have out here. But it's an oil field town. It's got some mines in the area, and my dad was a coal miner. I'd been in the mining industry for decades as I was growing up, and I got to see his work ethic. He was actually he's a safety professional as well. He's a certified mine safety professional,
Wow.
Okay.
and he left the mines more than a decade ago, and I actually got to work for him for a while. He now works for me as he's nearing retirement. But I got
The
to
vicious circle. The
yeah.
vicious circle of life there.
He's the one that really inspired me to get into safety. I got to work in every industry at the current company that I work for throughout the summers while going to school, and I got to see how safety was ran for each of those divisions. And then I tried to get into safety with my dad, and he was like, "Nope, you don't have the education." I was like, "I just graduated with a bachelor's degree," and he goes, "Not in safety." And he
Huh.
was very concerned about nepotism. He didn't want to be
Yeah.
I'm not giving my son a job just because he's my son. And I
Yeah.
actually appreciate it and respect him for it, even though I tried multiple
Right.
times. Like, I need to get in. And he goes, nope, you will keep
You,
working in the field.
you go
And
to
so I
mom.
work full
Dad
time.
won't hire me.
I still go to mom, even though he works for me. I'm going to tell mom that you're not doing that.
That's right.
Oh, that's funny. Dad, you better do that. I'm calling.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm
I got
calling
on
mom
speed
right
dial.
Yeah. But, he kept saying no, and I actually ended up going back into working with youth, and I needed a part-time job, and walked into the company again to talk to one of his safety managers, and saw paperwork everywhere. And I was like, "Oh my goodness, you need a clerk." And she said, "I know." And I said, "Well, if you need, I need a part-time job." And she said, "Aren't you working for the excavation division?" Because I just barely quit to work with youth. And I said, "Yeah, that was about a month ago. I quit." And now I'm crawling back to see if I can do some data entry. I just need 20 hours a week. And she's like, "Yeah, no, I'll take it." I was like, "Hey, you got to talk to my dad." And she was like, "Oh." And so he called me that night and goes, "Hey, this person wants to hire you." And I was like, "Really?" So
Oh,
Well, that's out of the blue. I wonder where that came from.
yeah. So I started doing data entry. He made it very clear: you work for her, you don't work for me. You listen to everything she does. If I want reports, I'll go through her, but you'll develop them. And just kept that Chinese wall up, that barrier of you don't work for me.
hmm
And then after a while, they started to see my college education paid off. I knew how to draw reports. I knew
yeah.
how to write,
Mhm.
and eventually they a full-time safety coordinator position, and that's where I really got into getting out with the crews and started my career. And not long after that, we had a tank in the oil industry, and I ended up looking for another job, became a safety manager for another company in Kansas, served as their director for a while, and was getting ready to deploy with the National Guard. And the manager who saw my name, I was walking down the hall, and he saw my nameplate, and I said, "Good morning, sir." And he stops and he goes, "Mealy, follow me." And I was like, "Oh no." So
Oh,
we
that
walked
ain't
to his
good.
No.
office. Oh, and he says, "What are you doing next spring?" And I was like, "Well, was going to be welcoming our newborn into the family and had maybe some vacations planned, and sounds like you have some other plans for me. And he goes, "Yep, you'll be deploying to Kuwait with this unit in the spring." And I said, "Okay."
Uh,
And he goes, "Okay, no fight." And I was like, "Didn't know I could."
Is
And
that an option? Yeah.
he said, "No, you can't." He goes, "But out of 5 people I command directed for deployment, you're the only one that gave me a straight yes. Everybody else kind of gave me an excuse of why they couldn't go." And I was like, "Well, you and I both know that a baby is not going to stop a deployment." He goes, "No, it's not."
Hmm.
So turns out though, as I was nearing, leaving my full-time job to go full-time with the National Guard to prepare for deployment, it was about a week or two prior to that. I'm going to bed at about midnight. I have drill at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'd been asleep for maybe 2 hours, and my wife wakes me up and she says, "Hey, we got to go to the hospital. The baby's coming."
Oh
And
wow.
I was like, "What?" Like half asleep still, and I
yeah.
was like, "You're going to buy stuff for the hospital tomorrow?" And she goes, "Baby's coming. My water broke." And I look over and the kids are dressed, and I'm I'm in flight mode now. Like, "Hey, let's go get my wife to the hospital." And she's like, "You can't come in because you got to get the kids home." I was like, "You can't do this alone." And the baby's 5 weeks early, like major concerns. And so I got to the house with the kids. I started making phone calls at 3 in the morning to some of my friends, and I finally got one of them. I said, "Dave, you got to come over." And he's like, "I'm on my way." So he comes, he cuddles with the kids, and the rest of the morning. He has them until 9 o'clock in the evening the next day because she was born with complications.
Oh.
We found out she had Down syndrome. We found out that she had no anus, which was major concerns for us. We didn't know what
Wow.
that meant.
Wow.
We
Right.
knew that it meant surgery, but my first response is like, she's gonna die, because I'd never heard of that before. And no, 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 we've
Right.
got ways to mitigate this. Um, let's go tell your wife that your beautiful daughter has Down syndrome. She's probably gonna have heart problems as well. 50% of kids with Down syndrome have a heart problem. And so our world was just turned upside down.
Well,
I
yeah.
texted my commander at 4 in the morning, "Hey, I'm not coming in." That was it. And um, when when we got through everything and I kind of calmed down and they rushed my daughter to the other hospital, I called my executive officer. I was like, "Hey, sir, baby came early. There's major complications. I'm not coming to drill this week." And he said, "Hey, take care of you and your family." Um, and then I rushed to the other hospital. I broke down on the side of the highway, just crying, just because my
Hmm.
kids are with my friends, my wife's at one hospital, my newborn's at another hospital. Like, I'm emotionally just torn
Right.
apart. And I get to the hospital and I'm able to hold her and rock her for hours. And my wife's able to get checked out of that hospital that night, and I'm able to bring her to our daughter, and we were there for in and out of the NICU and the SICU in St. Louis for 47 days, I think it was. A couple of
Oh
heart
wow.
surgeries, not the main one, but we prepared for another heart surgery she'd have about 7 months old. She had a full heart repair. And since then, she's 5 years old now. She's had 10 surgeries, and she'll have more in her heart, some on
Gosh.
her eyes. She's a trooper. Her siblings just love her to death. A year into it, we found out her older brother, who was 4 at the time, had very early onset Crohn's disease, and so we have another
Wow.
child with medical issues. And at this time, I'm also going through a faith crisis, and got disaffected from my religion, which I later returned to. Our world was, and this is why I'm heavy hitting on resiliency.
Hmm.
We need to build a resilient workforce because of what's going on in our personal lives. And I'd be remiss if I didn't put out my thanks and gratitude to all the people that supported us in the past 5 years also. With my faith crisis, with our kids, with our lives, we've had so many people step up and be there for us, friends, family, strangers. And that's what we're going for. If we can go from compliance to community in our industry, we're
I
going to
like that.
be better off. We are going to be greater for it. And
Right.
so my wife, she's a trooper. She holds everything together for us. She inspires me every day. She really supports what I'm doing and the efforts that I'm in. So personally, that's just a little bit about me.
Yeah. Wow. 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 You know, and
That's not
I've
just a
always
little
told
bit. That's a
people,
lot.
I've always told people that, I think everyone's gone through some form of struggle or some, you know, issues in their life. And, like you said, you're faith based. God uses that that I believe, to help other people. So there may be somebody, in your life in the future or whatever that may be going through some of that stuff, and you can actually relate to them.
Right? You build that empathy. Those gifts, whether it's patience, empathy, whatever else, those gifts that you receive through adversity,
Mm-hmm.
um, those, if you're not utilizing those gifts to help other people, we're wrong for it, right? That came at a time in our lives that we can help other people after us, and
Right.
that's something that we should value. Those gifts, don't toss those aside. Don't hide them.
Hmm. Pretty deep stuff. Good stuff though. So hopefully this, that really reached some of our listeners because I love that what you just said, compliance to community. If you don't mind, I'm going to use that on my site.
Yeah,
And hopefully, your story and what you're trying to put out in the world really starts taking off. And I hope that our podcast here can help be a platform or a vessel to get your word out as well too, because so many things that you've said is what the safety industry, or basically the construction industry in a whole, needs in the way it views the safety department. Because you talked about 50 years of bad perception with the drill instructor. I think one way that we could do that on our site, and tell me what your thoughts on these, but is that the 5 worker lunch where they actually get to sit down and speak to the executive levels of the management. And you know, it's not for the executive team to probe the questions, is to sit and listen, give the platform. This is a safe space, safe room. We're here. I'm, the VP of this, or I'm the CEO here. What are we doing good that we can improve on? What are we doing bad that can make your job easier? Things like that. And I think that's a good face of the safety program as a whole, to go from compliance to community. And I think that's a great way to get to that community level. What's your
that
thoughts on that?
you're building trust. Anytime you can engage with your employees, and not just engage, right, but take that what you heard from them and improve your organization, you're better for it, right? That's the community piece. People talk about safety culture. I do not believe in safety culture. Um, I think it was
Explain.
Sam Good,
This
I
is
think, really brought this to me. But you don't have. I read his book. I think it's called Safety Sucks. And he talks about the stuff that they don't tell you about being a safety professional, right? His book is a little bit crass for me. His second book, the manifesto, Safety Sucks, the manifesto, I think was a lot better. But he had a lot of really good points. You With safety culture, we don't talk about financial culture. We don't talk about HR culture. Why do we have safety culture, right? Um,
interesting.
you have company
Yeah.
culture, and if you put we don't talk about operations culture, quality culture. Why is safety culture a thing? It's just a small part of leadership culture. I can walk onto a job site and I can see if we have a strong leadership culture or a weak leadership culture by the way that they do safety, by the way they
Hmm.
turn in their inspections, by the way that they turn in their time cards and take care of their people, by the way they address concerns. And that's not safety culture, that's leadership culture. And I can tell you where
Right.
the strong leaders are and I can tell you where the weak leaders are. We've all had experiences where somebody told somebody not to speak up during a meeting, or why did you bring safety into it? That just escalated it, right? We're seen as HR professionals out on the job site, even though we're not,
Yep.
right? We're seen
Mm-hmm.
as extensions of the corporate world. We're trusted advisors. And if somebody in leadership tells you, why did you bring the safety guy into that? That's an HR issue. Or why did you escalate it to safety? You're just making things worse. You're actually tanking that culture of openness. Um, and other things too. I mean, and safety, we're wrong for things as well, right? We stop stuff just because we don't understand it or whatnot without seeking the context of it. But leadership culture is what we got to strive for. Community is what we got to strive for. Talking to everybody, and not just listening to the guys on the ground, but listening to senior leadership. What are their
Mm-hmm.
concerns,
Right.
and addressing those with the employees. Talking to middle management. What are your concerns? Asking them, hey, what do you expect of your safety professionals? And finding that mutual expectation of each other, and then bridging the gap between it, closing that gap. Um, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind
No,
of
I like
where
it.
I go with those things is to build a community. You start with trust through communication.
Yeah. No,
No.
absolutely. That I've just never. I'm actually going to go out and try to find that Safety Sucks book.
Yeah, I just wrote
That's
it down.
I
Yeah, I'm gonna get it
yeah,
too.
because I'm interested in those points and getting. I know you gave us somewhat of a cliff note version of the summary, but I'd like to read more detail about what you just hit on because
Right.
that I never thought about it that way. That's a very good way of looking at it. A different, a completely different point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we say safety culture? Because it's I know back in the day when construction started, the safety of the lives of our workers were not very, it wasn't the first thing that we thought of.
Right.
And so now, jumping ahead now, just say 100 years, safety is one of the things that we actually bid on, how much, what's all the fall protection going to cost? What are we going to do with the confined space air monitorings? How many tripods for rescue devices are we going to need to get in this confined space now? Stuff like
Right.
that is we're getting there. So I wonder if that's how it just slowly morphed into safety culture because the culture back then wasn't about safety and now we are. But the way you just worded it changes my whole point of view on it again. So I want to read that and get a little more. I'd like to find some more bullet points and discuss that.
Now, I think a
Um,
good thing to do, a good practice, is to define culture versus climate. Right. I absolutely believe in safety climate, um, how safety is performed at the point of operation.
yeah,
Um, right?
yeah,
You can walk into a room and you can gauge the temperature of the room. Is it hot or cold in here? And you know how to gauge and talk to your audience at that point.
Right.
Same thing with safety climate. Is it hot or cold climate? And I think this
hmm
speaks to that what I was talking about earlier about work is imagined versus work is performed, right? Versus work is imagined is that culture piece, how we write our policies, how we communicate our expectations. This is what we believe as an organization. Work is performed is that climate piece. How this stuff that we talk about is implemented at the point of operation. And then how do we close that gap? If it's not implemented the right way, we've got to close that gap and try to align those as perfectly as we can so that it permeates throughout the organization. You'll have a couple of bad actors. People say that they're safety minded. People say that they're a safe employee. Shortcuts are the first to manipulate.
yeah.
We all know
Yeah.
safety the manipulation. Um, but they're people too. They're part of our community too. We have to gauge, how do I reach that person? How do I change that person's heart?
hmm
We have to learn how to target and effectively influence everybody, not just the ones that are moldable.
Exactly. And this being you know, it's it's a very strong people game. Everybody out there is an individual, and you got to treat it as such. So, what the way I talk to you to get you to buy in to our policies, the way you've been doing it, versus the way I talk to your partner, is going to be completely different. What
Right.
sells you isn't going to sell the other person. And I hate to say it, like we're not selling you, but we, in a sense, we are, because we're wanting you to change the way you think and do things the right way. And it's not necessarily, maybe the right way is the wrong way to put it, but with all the data, all the analytics that have come out over the years, we know that safety is performed in a way to keep you safe. Like, these things are here. It's unfortunate that the CFRs through the OSHA regs, all those are written in blood. You know, somebody lost a limb, somebody lost a life, somebody did something to make OSHA step up and say, okay, now we're going to put a regulation. You've got to be tied off at 6 foot now. This is what we're going with. And you can go the minimum and stay at 6, or you can do your own site specific policy and go more stringent, but you will not step up above 6 foot without being tied off now. And here's why: because over the past 10 years of data, everybody that's fallen from 7 foot, 8 foot, 9 foot, seriously been injured. Somebody that's fell from 5 or 6 has bounced back a little easier. So, I don't know if that's what they did, but I'm just using that as an example. But
Well, and you speak to the why, right? Here's why. And I don't think people hear that from safety professionals enough, right?
I agree.
The easy why is you could get significantly injured or killed, right? That's not effective. The better why is, hey, you're going to miss your kid's next birthday. You're going to miss the stuff. And I'm going to give you another book. It's called People Work. And I think it's
I've got it.
Compliance to Care. It's Kevin Burns.
Kevin Burns. I've been reading it.
I love that book. He says that safety has to be a personal value,
Yeah.
not a company value. It's got to be personal.
Right.
It's got to be something that you believe in. And so if we can tap into people's why, right? Why is safety important to you? At every safety meeting, every training, go around the room, have them introduce themselves and tell us why safety is important to you.
Yeah.
Most of the time it's going to be about their family. I've got a
Yeah.
wife at home. I've got a girlfriend. I've got 3 kids. I've got 9 kids. I always ask, on purpose? You have that many on purpose?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
You know what causes that yet?
Well, I mean, if you think about people like PPE, respirators, you can't just take a respirator and pass it around. I mean, we have fit tests for a reason, to make sure that that mask fits tightly, because everybody's face is different. And the way you explain safety, I think a lot of safety personnel and massive fall into this, where I understand it, so you should understand it. So
Right.
I say it, do it. Where it's got to be sometimes tailored to certain people's background, education, um, their past of having a past safety person. You just be a jerk. So all of them are jerks. So I'm not going to list any of them. So you have to kind of, like you said, read the room and kind of taper to
Well,
them.
On that note, with fit testing, it's a way for them to trust their equipment, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And they can smell the stuff, and if they smell it, they've got to adjust their mask, right? The military, the Army especially, I love their fit testing with the big gas mask. They put us all in a big room, and they light the gas, and you're in this big room together, and they make you take off your mask, and you're choking on the chemical, and you try to hold your breath, but the drill sergeant will kind of knock you in the gut or ask you to cite your social security number or say the Army creed so that they can see that you're taking in that breath. And then you're dying. Snot's coming out of your nose.
Yeah.
Like you're in panic mode. And then they
Can't
tell you
see.
to don your mask. Yep, you can't see. Don your mask, tighten it, and suck it back to your face. And then you can start breathing again. Right. And the whole point of the exercise is to get you to trust your equipment. We do that on a small scale with the respirator. But can we take that same approach with other stuff? A spotter working outside of an excavator. Why not have the operator step out and say, hey, spotter, get into that cab right there, and I want you to see all my blind spots. You need to be able to see what I can't see. And that gets that spotter to trust his operator and what he can't see.
Right.
Any equipment, and the point for not sharing that respirator, because that's your respirator. You got to be able to trust that device to save your life if you were hit with a chemical, if you
Mhm.
were hit with a gas. Um, that's the why behind the respirator. If we're teaching it just a standard, we're doing it wrong as safety professionals. We're teaching the minimum standard here, but I want you
Yeah.
to trust your PPE. The worst thing that they can put out with safety gloves is cut level gloves, because we have a false sense of security. Cut
Yep.
level 5 gloves are not good with razors. They're not. They're even worse with bandsaws, because a bandsaw, it turns out, can cut straight through metal, right?
Yeah.
We've tested it out, and we've tested it on a few fingers. And the first question is, were you wearing your PPE? What good would that have done?
Right. Right.
I
Right.
just had a guy get a speck of dirt in his eye, and he goes, "To be honest with you, I wasn't wearing my ANSI approved safety glasses. I was wearing my Oakleys." I said, "Fantastic. Thanks for the honesty. If you were wearing your safety glasses, would that dust still have gotten in your eye because of the route that it took from the side or above?"
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate your honesty. Let's talk about leadership capital. Your guys need to see you wearing safety glasses. But unless that dust got through the impact rated glass, that buddy,
Right.
Yeah.
these things just so
Yep. Love it, man. We've lost you, Roy.
Yeah. I don't hear anything.
Yeah, it looks like he froze on us.
Maybe we can get him back here pretty soon.
can you
There
hear
we
me?
go.
Yeah.
There
There
we
you
go.
are.
There
Did
you
that
go.
cut out? Do I need to say that over?
You can if you want, and then we're getting to our hours, so we'll respect your time and our listeners' time. But go ahead and try to finish what you just mentioned, and we'll let Dave sign us off as typical.
I was just saying, we're trying to not blame people, right? Trust the processes.
Mhm.
I'm
Right.
glad he was honest with me about his safety glasses, but that probably would probably would have got dust in his eye anyway.
We lost you.
Okay. Well, anyway, I wanted to say thanks for inviting me on. I appreciate you guys, and I
No,
really
thank
valued
you.
the conversation. You guys are wonderful.
Oh, I
This
appreciate
was
it.
an absolute blast to speak with you and get to pick a brilliant mind like yourself. I mean, this is what Safety Gold Mines is about. You are like the safety gold mine we've been trying to find,
Oh, yeah.
and that's what
You're
we're.
kind. You're kind. I
Oh,
appreciate it.
But do you
You're from
ever
Utah.
do
You got
keynote
gold there,
speaking?
right?
Do
Sorry.
you go
What?
around and speak for people? Do you do keynote speaking and stuff like that?
I'm going to start. I haven't yet. Right now, I'm currently I'm in the beginning phases of writing a book.
Right.
Oh,
But
right.
Nice.
I think keynote speaking is in my future. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Excellent.
we had one that was his name is Garrison Wynn. I'm not sure if you heard of him.
Mm-mm.
He was a guest for us, and he was an absolute blast to talk to. He goes around, love to share. I found him on USSP as well, so you can look him up. But he puts a good bit of comedy in his, and he's a survivor of a refinery explosion. He actually
wow.
caught on fire, so he's got an excellent story too. And it's kind of humbled him as the why,
That's
So,
awesome.
But anyway,
Terrible,
Roy,
but
really
awesome that he's
appreciate you
sharing his
coming
story.
on. Yeah, he's good about it. He's got that. He does have a really good stage presence as well. So look him up and check out some of his stuff.
Will do. Thanks, Corey, David. I appreciate you guys.
Dave, you want to sign us off real quick?
Yeah, real quick. This is a question that I try to ask all of our guests, because I think a lot of our listeners, besides just what we've talked about in the hour, hopefully they like this question. I know I do. What would you? So yeah, it's all about me. What advice would you give someone who is either thinking about safety or or has just got into safety and feeling their way around? What kind of advice would you give them?
Research the path. You've
Okay.
got to
Yeah.
research your path to success, and you got to gauge what success looks like to you. So ask all the questions, find all the experts, network, and I would start with the industry. What industry do I want to start serving? You don't have to stick with a single industry, but which one do I want to start in? What's my next step? What's my 5-year plan? Are credentials a part of it? Is education a part of it? How is it going to affect my mental health? How's it going to affect health? Um, Research the path at 5, 10, 15 years out. Where do you want to be? And not just one path. Look at different alternatives to that path, because you might be heading in one direction and then get side railed and start going this direction. So yeah, research the path.
Excellent. Rory,
Great advice.
yeah, this has been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your weekend to spend with us and educate us and our audience. Again, really appreciate the time that you gave us.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. So have a blessed rest of your weekend. Enjoy your family, and please, if you ever want to come back, let us know. We'd love to have you again.
Yeah,
Sure.
will do. Thank you.
Part 2.
Awesome. Yeah, part 2. All right, everybody, stay safe. Thanks, Roy.
Be safe.
Yep, thank you.